education where you're in the idea generation part. You're trying to decide what you want to do with your career, if you want to start a business. So I think what I'm going to tell you is just really enjoy this time. It was my favorite part of college, hands down. When my first business I had before Turbine, I started when I was 19, so I was your guys' age, and plus or minus some. So I think if there's anything I tell college students, and I've been talking to young adults like yourself for over 10 years, and I'm starting to get old now, is you guys pay for this, man. I mean, it sounds trivial and stupid, but you guys are paying money to get this education. And at least when I was in school, football team was pretty good back then when I was in school, but I saw so many idiots, like, that's fine, you have fun, and I had a bunch of fun in college, and it was awesome, and it was great, and it was rewarding, and so I think, again, I'm not here to be preachy, but I would just say, just take advantage of that. You're going to find that when you get out of here, if for the people that just sat around and partied all day long, they're not going to find a very good job, you know, and they're going to be doing stuff that they don't want to do. And ultimately, if you want to sit and be involved in something exciting and be involved in some sort of organization that you're passionate about, doing something you're passionate about, perhaps starting a business, I mean, this is where you have to develop that discipline. You have to develop that repetition of what you do each day, how you study, how you interact, and how you ultimately network, as Deb has talked about, to get involved and get connected with things that you want to do. So I just say, don't waste this time. Don't waste these classes. I mean, my first business was started in an entrepreneurial class like this. That's where it started. I met my first business partner, and everything would, you know, took off from there. So it may seem like, yeah, I'm just going to school, whatever, but frankly, the way that the whole entrepreneurial culture as a whole in our country is being developed now, it's being driven by people that are young. I just got done at lunch today, read an active article on Mashable. Who knows what Mashable is?
Oh, really?
Read it. Okay, you got to read this stuff.
You need to get on Mashable.
It's one of the most, like, on top of extremely cool, innovative, kind of keeps the pulse of kind of the social, digital, and just business entrepreneurial culture that's going down. So let me just show you the site real fast. There's a bunch of others, but I would say if there's one that I had to pick that I would tell everybody to read no matter what, regardless, the guy that's like done this, he's maybe 27, 26. He started this when he was 19 or 20, and it's a news behemoth now. But it's extremely cool, I guess, in the sense it's relevant. It's maybe a better way of saying it. I'm trying to see if I can find the article I read today. And it was about some of the top entrepreneurs under the age of 15. 15! Guys, seriously? I mean, it's insane. That's the truth. Like, there's this guy that, like, developed, he was 11, this app for iPhone and iPad called, like, Bustin' Jeeber, like for hitting Justin Bieber, like this little app. The dude's making bank. He's done well. 11! And the thing is, you know, once in a while you had a prodigy, maybe back in the day when no, this is common now. This idea of understanding technology, understanding development, understanding trends and culture, it's completely woven into our society now. And it's creating an entirely different type of educated individual that goes to school and ultimately is able to harness and develop an opportunity. So like you guys are kind of sandwiched in where, clearly, all of you, I'm sure, none of you, any of you remember no internet? Okay, maybe a little bit. So for the most part, most of you have all been around the internet, okay? So like, to date myself, when I was in college, that's when the internet started to be a real deal. When I was in high school, it was kind of whatever, who cares? But then that's when it became a legit way of doing business communications. So now that's just a portion, a snippet of what you use in terms of digital communications and interaction. So check this site out. There is some damn good stuff there. And especially if you're trying to come up with ideas for any sort of business you want to do, I tell you what, read these things. Because you'll see what's going on. There's a pulse of what's happening. You'll see the stuff that's, it covers old school companies like Microsoft. It covers Apple, obviously. It covers Google, Samsung. Covers, how many of you heard of Kickstarter?
You better
Okay.
have.
All right, we got to check that out too.
I was going to say, that was on your list.
Okay, so if you got an idea, it's called crowdsource funding. So there's a I should say a watch that was come up with an idea that would, at least before if Apple makes a watch or whatever, that would be a smartwatch that would integrate with your phone and different stuff. And frankly, there's a lot of people that don't wear a watch. Mine's actually my iPod. But the cool thing was, that was just an idea. And then you would basically source it out to the people that were interested in investing. Not like 10,000 bucks, but maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks. And then you would basically be on a waiting list, and based on when you invested, you would be given more stuff. Well, this has been ridiculously helpful, because the number one reason ideas don't get off the ground is they don't have money. Access to funding is one of the hardest things for entrepreneurs. So you might have the greatest idea in the world, but if you don't have bank, it ain't gonna happen. And there's been a lot of things that have developed that were not even around when I was in college that now are at your fingertips to be able to do. So this is one. All you need to do is produce a video and show a proof of concept. Most of these ideas are usually either product driven. They could be as conventional as one was for a coffee mug. For many of you that drink coffee, I don't know, for me, I'd agree with this. It's either too hot or too cold. It's like you get it right away, it's scalding, you leave it going, and it's crappy and cold. So they came up with these, I don't know, they're like a metal, think of it as a metal ice cube, for lack of a better description. Jewels, I think that's what they were called. They were actually on the show Shark Tank. Anybody watch Shark Tank?
Yeah,
okay, there you go. So again, there's all this stuff going on, guys, all over the place. It's entrepreneurial. So they went on there, and they were one of the huge success stories of Kickstarter. Let's see if I can find it. I think they're like, no, I can't find it. I'll have Deb post it because it's really sweet. But long story short, that's not technology, but they used this some sort of alloy or the metal that was totally safe to have inside of liquid that managed the temperature of the liquid to keep it from being too hot or too cold. And you just drop them in your coffee, boom, there you go. And your coffee would stay warm for like an hour without having it in a thermos. Pretty sweet. Now, if you think about this, so how was that developed? And it was based on the pain or the issue of, I can't get coffee the right temperature. Okay, so is there an answer to solve that problem? Well, can we come up with one? There. So if you'll notice in every single one of these, like, products that are developed over and over and over and over again, I mean, it seems obvious, but it's always developed because there's a void, because there's something that doesn't exist, because somebody has not solved the problem. So in many cases, I would argue that the number one thing an entrepreneur does is solve problems. How many of you like to solve problems? Sure? Okay. Okay. If you don't like to solve problems, you will not make a good entrepreneur. Because you're often blazing trails. You're doing things, even if it's in an industry that already exists, you have to figure out ways to get yourself out of predicaments all the time. I mean, hell, I'm in one right now that I'm dealing with. And you just have to be comfortable with that. If you like that, you'll make a damn good entrepreneur. Because it doesn't mean you have to do everything. It means you have to figure out how to use the resources that are at your disposal. People, products, services, and plug those into your ecosystem to be able to run your business. But by far and large, the hardest part about being an entrepreneur is you know, the level of responsibility and the fact that solving those problems can get very overwhelming. You know, I always joke, I've been an employee and I've been an entrepreneur. I've owned 3 different companies, had 4 different business partners. I've been an employee at 3 different other organizations, so I've seen both sides. And there's pros and cons to being an employee, and there's pros and cons of being an entrepreneur. But both of them thinks the other job is better. Every owner would rather say, good God, I'm tired of working until 2 a.m. every night. I wish I could just check out at 5 and just be an employee. And the employee goes, I'm so tired of being shackled down by the rules and all the things I can't do. I want to have freedom. I want to do what I want to do and be an entrepreneur. So I think that the answer is they both have their place. You have to have worker bees. You have to have people that work in the context of an organization. But you also have people that solve those problems and see those opportunities and ultimately create and establish and understand new ideas. But I think the interesting thing about today, and I can't really explain why this is, but we're living in a culture where there is way more people solving problems than there used to be. I think one would argue that the entrepreneurial culture in the United States got really sucky there for a while. And the irony is when, in the late 1990s, I'm not sure if you guys study this, what was called the dot-com bubble burst. And everybody was investing in all these new dot-coms. Amazon was one of them and a bunch of others, eBay and so forth. They survived. But there was a bunch that did not. And they just totally tanked. And it was right after the year 2000. I started my first business then. Yeah, it really sucked at that time. The economy blew. It was horrible. But what was really bizarre, it was during those times is when things like Facebook got started. You know, it was some of the things with Android and their phones got started then. There was all these different programs and different things that started happening during this time when really the economy was horrible. So now you fast forward to 2007, you had the same thing. Any of you have friends or relatives, family members that lost their job during 2007? Any of you? Okay. How many of you are from Nebraska?
Most of them.
Okay, guess what, guys? We didn't deal with that. We're like one of the only places in the country. If I was right now in, say, Kansas City or Chicago, I bet 3/4 of you would have raised your hand and said, somebody you knew lost their job. My wife is from Wichita, Kansas, and at one point their unemployment was almost like 17%. Guys, that's a lot. Okay? So we didn't have to deal with the pain, but a lot of people did. The entire country as a whole. There's some parts like Detroit and whatnot were over 20, 25%. I mean, it was bad. And it still is bad in a lot of parts. It hasn't gotten better. But here's the coolest thing. And again, our country's not perfect. I mean, I know there's all kinds of issues and political gridlock and yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, there's something that we do in the United States that's so rockstar awesome, is we innovate when shit goes wrong. When our back's against the wall and we're like, oh, I have no job, I don't know what to do, oh my gosh, I gotta pay this, they come up with an idea. When I was watching Shark Tank for a while, and again, if those that like that whole hustle of, trying to get investment dollars and capital, Mark Cuban's on it, so it's pretty hilarious. There's a good group of them there, old school, new school kind of investors. And there was, I bet, at least half of them that would come on the show had some way, somehow had lost, or their spouse or whoever had lost their job. And they're like, oh, so what are we going to do? We're either going to bitch about it or we're going to do something about it. So they started a job, or they started a company. And that's to me probably the greatest, there's many things that we've been successful at as a country, and many things are terrible. But one of the things I'm proud of is that we do understand how to solve problems. When things aren't going well, we figure it out. So I think it's something that we're very